Hello and welcome, fellow motorsports fans. My name is Marcel, and I'm here to talk about what has been a comparatively calm week in the world of single-seater racing. That is not a bad thing though, because that'll give me time to go a bit in depth about the Formula Regional Oceania Championship, and we will also discuss the current state of Formula E as an on-track racing product. Before we get to that though, I quickly want to say thank you all so much for pushing me that close to the 200 subscriber mark in a very short amount of time. The last few weeks have been great in terms of viewership, and yeah, welcome to all the new guys watching, and let's continue building this little racing community together. But anyway, enough chit chat, let's get to the action. The Formula Regional Oceania had its second round this weekend, and Roman Bielinski continues to be the class of the field really in all regards. He's dominated race 1 and 3 and unfortunately had to retire from race 2 due to I believe it was a broken rain light if I remember correctly. The Sunday was wet in both races, so yeah, overall he would probably have an almost perfect win record by now if not for that mechanical DNF. Christian Mansell also continues to perform. He also is still the kind of guy you'd expect him to be, at the very least a clear-cut second best on the grid. Now, the interesting question we have the time to discuss this time around is how much of that is the car and how much is the actual driver performance, because that is a bit of a curious case. The one thing we have to say for Bielinski and his M2 team is that it also looks like it's the most competitive car by quite a bit, I would say. Now, I don't say that because of Bielinski's performance necessarily, even though that's a good indicator as well, obviously, but it's because none of their drivers are like lower midfield or even below the midfield at all. Now, this also makes sense when looking at the driver lineup. This is why it's a bit of a curious case, because, you know, none of them are bad by any stretch. If I had to pick, I'd probably say like it's between Lacorte and Michael Shin, who's the worst guy in that team. Probably, I don't know, it is a bit of a weird one, but yeah, all of them are very much midfield capable drivers, so I think the car certainly helps them all around. Now, for Christian Mansell on the other side, and his, I think it's pronounced Gil's team. I don't know. I'm bad with pronunciations, as you may already know. His team is also competitive all around, and that's the curious bit about this. It's a much smaller team by the looks of it. They're only running 4 cars as well, but both Natoa and also Alex Crosby, who I've been very surprised by all around, they're both performing well as well and are like on a similar level to all the M2 drivers. So this, unfortunately to me, it doesn't really answer any questions. I just wanted to bring this question up more or less. Which of these two is the better package? I don't know. Now, there's obviously also more teams involved in this, and we also don't really know where they stand. So there's the Kiwi operation, which ironically is exclusively North American drivers in the Oceania Championship. Bit of an odd case really. And again, I'd say they perform about as I would have expected just based on their drivers. So maybe with that information on top, with Woods, Toff and Sherlock, they're both like in the midfield as well, as you'd expect from F4 graduates from one of the weaker F4 series. You know, they are all right drivers, not outstanding, not bad. It's all on, yeah, as I said, all sort of according to expectations, making it really difficult to actually rank the cars. The only one I'd be somewhat comfortable in saying it's at least probably not the greatest package on the grid, that's for sure, is the MTech operation, where obviously we all know Tommy Smith, probably not the most deserving F3 driver of all time. Nonetheless, he is a capable young driver. He is probably familiar with these tracks, and I don't think he should be performing quite as bad as he is at the moment in the series. So at least this leads me to believe that maybe the car is a little bit off compared to the other 3. Then again, he also has the worst team easily in terms of like average driver strength. Like Factory is not on a level of that series. I don't know who Matriano Lim is. Like it's not a strong lineup either. So yeah, this will need the next 3 weeks of competition, I think, to really crack this case of how good really is Roman Bielinski. At the end of the day, that is the question. Is he substantially better than Mansell or not, essentially? Because if he is, then all of a sudden he is a really interesting prospect. So yeah, we will have to keep an eye on this in the coming weeks. And please let me know down below which team you think is strongest, or rather, is there any team that's like significantly off to the point where it's holding back its drivers a little? Anyway, let's move on to Formula E. Formula E had its second round of racing with a pair of races, in fact, in Saudi Arabia, and it has continued to be the slightly problematic racing package that we've seen last time out, unfortunately. Before we get to that, though, let's quickly sum up the results, because at least they continue to be quite interesting for the overall championship. All of the heavy hitters that you would have expected are getting involved already. Race 1 was Jake Dennis' time to secure a pretty dominant win, actually. Nice bit of strategic work to get the passes done. I think it was Evans and Werner he had to pass, overcutted both of them to take a convincing victory. Evans also the one guy on the grid trying to make that race a little bit more entertaining than it was. Attempted quite a few overtakes, which at the end actually ended up costing him the podium, but he only conceded it to teammate Cassidy, so a bit of a win-win, I suppose, for Jaguar. In general, I quickly want to point out that we have seen very good teamwork between Jaguar. The pair of Kiwis is apparently getting along quite well. They are willing to work together, willing to swap positions and all that good stuff. So yeah, they will definitely be a threat in the championship. The second race, we had an entirely different story with both the Andrettis all of a sudden locked up deep down the mid-pack. Dennis didn't even score points in that race, and Nato was even behind the Mahindra-powered cars, if I remember correctly. Whereas in that race, we had Cassidy winning in a pretty dominant way. He only had to get past Rines and more or less ran away with it afterwards. He did get real in at the end, but it didn't really matter. No overtaking was possible. And so, yeah, Cassidy has had a fantastic start to the season, really all around. Only guy to be on the podium in all races and all that good stuff. Now, why isn't that as exciting as it maybe should be? And that's, if you've seen the races, it's because the actual, like the TV product that we as the fans get to watch is very lackluster at the moment. The racing is incredibly subpar, which at least the speculation is it's because the cars use too little energy or the races are too short, whichever way you want to put it. So taking the strategy out of the equation, and then you essentially end up with pretty wide cars in the hands of professional racing drivers on super tight street circuits, spec cars as well, largely. So it's no real surprise that there's not a lot of overtaking, but obviously this goes entirely against everything that Formula E has been about in the last years, where it's been like super chaotic. Obviously last year, especially the peloton style bike racing that we were almost witnessing. And there is just none of that excitement. It's all gone. The few overtaking attempts we see are largely like borderline suicidal. Yeah, there's just not a lot happening, and it's really frustrating to see. So definitely don't give up on Formula E just yet. I don't want to say it's the end of Formula E, because that's just very early, and I'm sure they will figure it out eventually. I just hope it's during this season and not only afterwards, because at the moment, while I am still very excited to see how the championship overall unfolds, yeah, watching the races has been more of a chore to get through, really, than the entertainment it used to be in the previous years. Now, I don't want to end this on a negative note, so let's quickly talk about one positive thing, especially also for the feeder series fans around here, which is Jehan Daruvala, who has transitioned to Formula E for this season. He had a really rough start in the first round. His first race this weekend was also similarly just terrible, really pure backmarking. And I was expecting, more of the same for the second race, which, just to make this very clear, that's no big critique to him anyway. He is a rookie in a series that's very different from any other kind of racing. So I think taking some time to adjust is more than expected. But yeah, he has actually adjusted really well, and he was on track to beat Maxi Günther in the second race. Yes, he, beat him massively in quali, and then during the race sort of slipped back into Günther. But nonetheless, I needed to shout this out, because unfortunately the end results don't reflect what he was able to do on track, as he had to DNF with a brake failure after around the halfway point of the race, if I recall correctly. But yeah, don't get fooled by his lack of points. He is actually adjusting to the car, and I hope to see more good performances from him in the near future. Anyway, let me know all of your thoughts about Formula E down in the comments, and the current state of things, if you still watch the series, or if that's like stopping you from beginning to watch it, whatever it may be. And otherwise, if you enjoy what I'm doing here, leave a like, leave a subscribe, and tune in next week for another episode of Race Week Review.